Hey guys, and welcome back to episode 8 here in Devil Dagger. Again, we're still suffering from the audio issue where my voice got lost, so we're doing a voiceover here in Gnomoria. But we've got a good bit of workshops outside. I went ahead and terraformed a little bit, removing the grass that was hanging over the well, and I put a door in front of the hallway where we get our water from. Today we're going to be excavating a little bit, creating a room for our carpenters. And the main reason for that is that I like to give my gnomes a little bit of, personal space where they can get away from everything. Like I said, I try to keep the terraforming to a minimum, but there are certain things that are more aesthetically pleasing to me, and so I try and work with the land as much as I can, but sometimes you just gotta take Mother Nature out, I guess you could say. Still doing pretty well in terms of our second official season, first season where we can actually be rated. But I believe I'm going to set up a tower right in this area. And the main reason is that it'll give us a good watch position where we can set up a gnome with a crossbow, and he can try and take out or discover any threats that are coming from the left-hand side of the tower and up on the mountain here. It'll also, the back part of the mountain, if any goblins are coming in, they'll be able to see that, but that's pretty far down the road. We're not going to be seeing that anytime soon, unfortunately, as much as I would love to get into that section of building. We're just going to keep focusing on basically trying to provide enough food, get some more immigrants in here so we can start getting people to work on their specializations and trying to create our military. We finally have the Great Hall, which is doing a good job of attracting immigrants. It's giving our colony a good base value, but right now we're going to deconstruct the stone cutting, masonry, and stone carving workshops, and that's because we're actually going to turn that into the carpentry area. Like I said, when I first established those workshops, it was just a temporary structure. I'm going to expand the general goods stockpile just to give us a little bit more walking room in there and to give us a little bit more storage options. Seems like everything's going pretty well. I believe this is where I was trying to decide how I wanted the carpenters to actually be placed, because you want to place the carpenters in relative proximity to your groves. That way they have a ready access to the logs if you don't actually create a stockpile inside their workshop, which, my personal opinion, it's better to create at least one tile size of stockpile with a crate on it that can store the different types of logs you want created. That way it just basically puts all your production to the express lane. Right here I'm just trying to decide how I want the stock room to be shaped, and that's why I'm building these walls right here. Unfortunately, because I'm not doing this off the cuff and I'm having to do this as a voiceover, it's a little bit more difficult to remember exactly what I was doing or what I was saying at that particular point, but I was trying to give the stockroom a nice shape, because I really do not like just a square room. I know the Great Hall right now is pretty square or rectangular in its size, and the dormitory where everyone sleeps right now is square in size, but we're gonna fix that. Just unfortunately not right now, but things are coming together pretty nice. Like I said, right now we're just trying to do some excavating, trying to move things around, get it where they need to go. because although it's nice to have a general goods stockpile, you want to have smaller stockpiles closer to the workshops that's going to be accessing them. That way your gnomes don't have to travel as far, so they're spending more time working rather than basically hauling. So we get our stockpile set up. We will start setting up the workshops for the carpenter. And just noticed that there are quite a few different colors of crates and barrels, which I'm not a big fan of. I tend to like to have a uniform color of crates, but it's not really, that's more of an OCD complaint rather than a general complaint. I will eventually move those around and get the same colors crates and barrels. I believe all the sacks are the same color regardless if you make them out of wool or cotton, but the barrels can definitely be changed color, which adds a lot of variety to the game if you start installing mods, which I know I'm not actually playing with any mods in this playthrough, but it is something to think about. I may actually play with some mods at some point. Give me your thoughts and opinions on that. If you guys would like to see me showcase a specific mod, just go ahead and leave a comment down below and I'll be happy to talk with you about it. If you've had any experience with some really good mods that add some content to the game that's not in the vanilla game, let's talk about it in the comments down below and I'll be happy to implement it if, you know, the majority of people actually do want a specific mod. The shape of the carpentry area, it might look a little funny, but like I said, I do like to follow the shape of the land for the most part. I think it gives the colony a lot of character. It adds a more realistic feel to the colony, because obviously when you're first starting out, you can't really choose how things are going to look, otherwise you'll waste valuable time trying to make everything look completely perfect. I mean, the Great Hall looks pretty shoddy right now, but I mean, it gives our place somewhere nice to look. It has a value of 2,326, which makes us almost hit our goal of 5,000. We're sitting right over 4,800 right now. So we're setting up our workshops, trying to make them all uniform in their construction. That way everything looks nice and you don't have wonky colors just all over the place. And this is where you start to see some of my OCD actually kick in, because I like my carpentry workshops to actually work well with one another and look like they flow in terms of how they create. It's not the optimal setup, because the optimal setup would be to have the sawmill's output next to the carpenter or wood carver's input, and that's just so your gnomes have less travel time. But I mean, they're close enough that it's pretty negligible, to be quite honest. So that's why I'm spending an exorbitant amount of time right here just rotating things, seeing how I want them to look, trying to basically measure things out in my mind. I'm not sure if while I was recording this I was actually making that known, but that is the main reason why I spent a lot of time just rotating this, getting a general feel for how it looks. And a monitor lizard has been spotted. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe our gnomes actually go out there and fight it. Yeah, we got one going out. He gets hurt, runs back for a bandage, but then everybody else jumps in, and that monitor lizard is just taken out pretty quickly, because our gnomes have been training for a little while, so they've gotten much better. It has an injured upper body, right leg, left back foot, tail, and right arm. So, and it's fallen over. So, yeah. Looks like I'm trying to take a look at the combat here, but again, trying to remember all the user interfaces, it's kind of difficult sometimes. I finally find it, and this is where you can see some of the details of what exactly your gnomes are doing in combat. You can get a play-by-play, if you will. It's not as detailed as Dwarf Fortress, but I do appreciate it. There's quite a bit of humor in some of it. I mean, hitting the upper body, smashing the hide, and stopping at the ribs, it's pretty detailed. I mean, for our gnome to actually kick the monitor lizard that hard is pretty impressive. Your gnomes can bite, punch, kick. If they have a weapon, they'll use the weapon. And the monitor lizard's attacks are actually put in yellow, which shows you that it missed. If it actually hit, it would be in red. The purple means that it's basically something that you need to pay extra special attention to. Right here, one of our gnomes' left arm is bleeding, and that's probably when he ran back and grabbed a bandage. But right now, our gnome's perfectly fine. He's not hurting at all. I tell you, those bandages, they are the cure-all for any and all types of injuries. But when we're actually able to take out an animal, it provides us a source of meat other than our yaks, so we don't have to keep sacrificing our yaks. We can build up our yak population and get things going. Back to work on the carpentry area. And I guess right here I'm going to try and figure out how the carpenter's workstation is going to work. Unfortunately, with that back, I guess, shelf or workbench area on the carpenter's area, it makes things look a little funky in my opinion, but we finally do figure out how we want everything to look. We get the two support beams to actually function with one another. It looks like these two workshops are actually working together, where the gnomes could basically just set a log right there, cut it to length, set the planks right there, cut it to length. In my mind, it adds a bit of realism to the game, because I'm not sure how the gnomes would actually cut the planks and the logs to length without having some kind of support right there. And you can't really do it with just one support, so in my mind, it's kind of weird that each workshop only has one support. So that's why I like to have them basically rotated that way. We give our gnomes another access point for bringing items in or out of the colony. And that's basically just to facilitate the carpenters and lumberjacks moving from the groves to the workshop area. But we're setting up all the craft 2 limits for the different types of wood that we have. Obviously, we're not cutting orange or apple wood right now. We're only focusing on pine and birch. But we set up our torch limits as well, so that we always have a stockpile of torches created. And that's just to provide our gnomes with light. And once you get down to the lower levels, you'll actually need those torches to keep mobs from spawning. In the early game, I like to use just regular wood doors. There was a bug at one point in time where the wood doors were actually stronger than the stone doors, and the enemies, they couldn't break through it for whatever reason. It was very odd. In this little nook right there, the 2x2 square that kind of looks like it doesn't belong, I actually end up setting a stockpile, and I thought it looked very nice for what it was doing. Right now, obviously, we're not going to be doing that, but that is how it ends up looking. But I like having the wood carvers area right here, because it puts the input, which is the left side of all of the chairs, towards the output of the carpenter, and the stockpile where the planks are going to be stored. I'm going to be creating a pathway from the stock room through. Oh, we have goblins attacking. And the dreaded goblin music, which is always fun. These goblins actually don't have any equipment on them. they're hand-to-hand combat fighters apparently, so they're going to be trying to use their goblin foo against our gnome foo, which they'll soon discover is no match. And everybody's moving in. The goblin has died. Another goblin has died. The third goblin's on his way out. And we're just going to eat those goblins. Which, in my mind, is kind of terrifying. There was an episode of Goosebumps that dealt with lawn gnomes coming to life, and it used to terrify me as a kid. There are quite a few of the Goosebumps stories used to terrify me as a kid. I completely forgot that our priority at our tailor wasn't actually set up correctly. We had set up our priority of our bone carver, unfortunately. And we want our tailor to constantly be making the bandages, because if you run out of bandages, you basically run out of your ability to heal. Even if you do have a hospital, you still need bandages, which is why when I do set up the hospital, there will be a stockpile of bandages kept in there, as well as one towards the front lines of defense. And here we're just adding a little bit of light, trying to figure out how exactly I want the light to be basically distributed through the carpentry workshop. I decided to go with a standing torch because, if I'm not mistaken, the standing torches actually provide one more tile out in terms of their radius, because the light is generated in a circle around it. Obviously, it's a blocky circle because of the nature of the game, but it does generate one more tile in terms of light, and I'm not sure why that decision was made, but I mean, it makes sense to me. There's one or two corners of the carpentry workshop that doesn't exactly have light, but that's okay. And here we're setting up the stockpile for the planks. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. We just name it carpentry supplies, that's right, because as well as planks, there's also the you could have sticks that could be used in the creation of basically everything else in terms of wood, but I believe that's all we put in there. Can't remember if we actually set up the correct transfer of pulling from the general goods, which probably should have been done, but that's okay. When we actually do get back to the episodes where I'm recording live, I will be discussing all of the benefits in terms of stockpiles and how to have them pull from one another. One, it gives your gnomes something to do so that they're not just idling, because an idle gnome is not, all it's doing is eating and drinking. It's just a consumer. It's not producing anything at that point when it's just idling. So you always want to have your gnomes doing something, even if it's as simple as just moving items around from stockpile to stockpile. But we go ahead and we start setting up some of the flooring. And right here is, I'm just focusing on the areas underneath the doors, and I think it just adds a really nice quality to the doors. I believe it, it makes the doors stand out. And we actually start setting up some of the flooring in this workshop as well. And it's basically just some pathways for our gnomes to get around the workshop. But after that, I think we're going to call it an episode here. We're just going to basically leave a couple things done for our gnomes so that they can get around the workshop. But other than that, it's really nice that we finally have a dedicated area for our carpenters. They won't be forced to move through dirt as much. They can actually have an available area, at least in my mind. But that's gonna about do it for us here in Devil Dagger, guys. So if you would, leave me a like, a dislike, give me a rating, let me know how you feel about this episode. Drop me a comment if you got anything you'd like to say, if you'd like a gnome named after you, and I'll be happy to oblige. But y'all have a great one.